Hello, this is Alexis with GrowHow, and I made a realization this last summer. I've been somebody that grows in the ground almost religiously as far as feeling like it's the best thing for me to do. But this summer I realized I'm old. I already knew that, but my joints are getting shot. My ability to bend over, weed, and do stuff and kneel on the ground is just gone. I can still do it, but it's getting harder and harder and harder. So I am going to slowly, as costs allow, and it's going to be pricey, I'm going to start moving to raised beds or containers. There are some trade-offs that I'm going to have with that. The first being it's going to take more water per square foot of surface area for a pot. I already conserve water fairly well in my landscape, so I'm willing to spend a little bit more in my gardening areas. The second thing is I'm going to need some method of raising the garden. And I thought about this. There's some different materials and different methods you can use, and all of them have got their pluses and minuses. There is no perfect way of doing things. I had one gentleman, I use the term loosely at this point, who actually chewed me out because I didn't do his way. I didn't advocate his way. It was the only way to do things. There's not just one way to do things. There are multiple ways. You just have to know the trade-offs. So first of all, let's go over the materials that can be used in a raised bed or a container gardening. The first one, I think, is just a couple of boards. You make a little square rectangular box with some boards, you stake them in the ground or drill them together or nail them together and fill it with some sort of soil, and you've got a raised bed. This is probably the cheapest way. It is certainly the most available way. Most places have access to lumber of some sort or another. Hardware store, big box store, your father's garage, not the stuff that his garage is made out of, but what he may be storing in there. The problem with this is that tends to limit you on how deep the box goes. For somebody like me that's in the early stages of declining mobility, do I want a box that's raised 6 inches, 12 inches, 18 inches? I can go as high as I can build with wood, but when you use wood, you tend to go shallow. 6 inches, sometimes even 4 inches. It's a great way to do things, but it's not really great for taller stuff. The other disadvantage with wood is it rots. I don't care whether you get premium treated lumber, redwood, in contact with the soil, it tends to rot. And I've seen treated stuff rot quicker than you would expect. That's not to say you shouldn't use what works. Keep in mind, treated may not be the best for root vegetables. Things that are coming in contact with that wood may pick up some of the chemicals that are used to treat it. Check and make sure that whatever you get is certified for what you use it for. And I may go with wood for some stuff, but again, I know that as time goes on, I'm going to need higher access, and I don't really want to structurally build something that's 20 inches tall for me, or even necessarily 18 inches tall. The other thing is as you go higher, you need to fill it with more soil or have something to fill the space. When you have something like that that's going to be open on the bottom and connected with the earth, you either need to put a barrier, you need to put all soil in it, whereas some people, well, you could fill it with something like wood that's biodegradable easily if you have access to that. I happen to have a good wood pile from when I was a pruner, good fruit wood. I don't know if I want to use it just to fill a box, but it's a possibility, and it wouldn't harm the soil underneath it. Again, if you're going to try filling it with anything else, you may need to have plastic or landscape barrier, and that runs into other issues which may or may not be a problem, but you should think about it twice before you go that direction. So again, wood rots easy, but it's really good for lower boxes on the cheap. Most people can afford it. The next thing you can do is plastic. I haven't seen specific grow boxes with a lot of plastic in them. I'm quite sure they exist. It seems to me I've seen them before somewhere, but I'm not sure where, so I couldn't go back and recheck that. And plastic's got all the usual problems. Potential contamination from chemicals, forever chemicals. They're going to break down in sunlight and UV rays. Selection, you can get pots really cheap, and I'll get into this a little bit later about pots. You can get pots really cheap, but those are going to be limited on size unless you've got a really good pot dealer. And I have Spent years looking for somebody to sell good plastic pots. I know they're out there, folks. I've seen them before. I've used them before. I can't find them anymore. The biggest thing is I think that the chemicals are going to be an issue and the longevity are going to be issues. And again, you're looking at pots, not so much boxes. I'm not attached to boxes, but that's what most people think of when they're doing a raised bed. Next thing is metal. Metal's good. Metal can be zinc coated, very good durability. It will rust eventually, even zinc coated, especially where it's been cut or where there are connectors like bolts or screws or nails. Some metal beds are better than others. Some use wood, most are finished with some sort of plastic. Paint these days, very often you can just say it's plastic and you're good enough. It's not bad. I've got friends who are using metal beds and are thrilled with them. It's a great way to go if you get a good one. And they're going to be 200 plus for maybe a 6x3. I should also mention that there are prefabricated boxes to be sold that are made out of wood, and those I think are actually one of the better options because you got somebody else that's done the engineering, and if they've done a good job, you're going to get a longer durability. And they're going to be around 600 for about a 2.5 to 3 by, we'll say 5 or 6. Not a bad way to go. The fourth option, this is one that most people haven't thought of, is ceramic pots. Now, I am going to say it right up front. I work at a store that sells ceramic pots. I'm biased. I want you to all come in and buy my pots because I'll make money. But if you're willing to go on the higher end and have smaller units, the ceramic pots do have some really strong advantages. They're thicker than metal, so there's better insulation for the soil. They don't rot. They're more decorative than any of the other options that I've seen. They're more expensive. And the other side effect is even a good pot can crack. Putting them together, it's really hard to do quality control through the entire layer of clay before it's fired and after it's fired. Even with the best intentions, pots break. We brought one inside for a display, gosh, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Anyway, it ended up having a crack in it, and which was very disappointing. It was not an old pot, it just had a weakness, it had a flaw. I think the flaws are a little bit harder to find than in wood or metal or plastic. Those inherently are easier to see what's going on because they're thinner. Like I say, the pluses are you can have a good thick pot. You can have a really pretty pot. I recently in the last couple of months, had a client who came in and said, I've had this pot for 40 years. It finally cracked. The others are in great shape though. So it can last longer than wood by a long shot, longer than plastic by a long shot. Metal so much depends on conditions, it's hard to say. So the major, again, on the ceramic is cost and size. It's not going to be as big as the other options. And so you have to plan accordingly. But keep it as an option. Also remember, what you buy at Costco and what you buy at a dedicated pot shop may be different. I'm lucky. I work at a pot shop. I know what I can get. I know what they cost. I know what their durability is. I also know I have one in my state. If you're in Nebraska, you may not have that option because the quality that we get isn't available in every state. It just isn't. You've got to have an entrepreneur at some point who's willing to bring them in and make it work, or somebody that's got an established store that's willing to bring them in. And the good ones take a bit to bring them in. That's why they're more expensive, but that's reality. None of these options in my book are inherently bad. Wood has got good arguments. Metal's got good arguments. Even plastic has got good arguments. Take a look at it. I realize most people that watch my videos are going to be budget conscious. That's fine. Be budget conscious. Don't damage yourself because you want something cheap now. Be budget conscious with an eye to the future. I recommend the metal and ceramic for that. Even though there are some really good wood products available, I think metal and ceramic will last longer. And those are things to think about. Again, none of these decisions is bad, and there's not one best decision. What are your needs? How high up do you need that bed to be? What are your requirements going to be for environmentally safe or feeling like your food is safe or whatnot? Now, the other thing is, and I alluded to this earlier, is filling the pots up with dirt all the way. that can be expensive, and I'll go into soils more in a future video. But if you have a container rather than just a box that sits on the ground, you have more options about what you can use up some of that spare space with. Any of them, wood can work, even in an open bottom box. But if you have closed bottom, wood will work. But you can also, because you have control, you can use things like styrofoam beads or packing popcorn, whatever you want to call it. Again, that brings up the plastic issue, so you may not want to go that direction. There's other things you could fill them up with, rocks, whatever. It just takes some imagination and an understanding of what you've got that's available right now or can be available easy. You can always make friends with your local arborist. Any suburban area of any size has got a number of arborist companies. If you can find out who's close to you and they want to get rid of wood, you're in golden shape. So there's some things to think about. I'm going to give some more thought as to what you can fill the boxes with that are more environmentally safe than the packing popcorn. Hopefully more available to everyone rather than just wood. Think about it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. You may think I'm wrong on plastics. That's okay with me. You may think I'm wrong on metal. That's okay with me. We can have a good, reasonable, logical discussion and maybe come up with the best idea, and maybe I'll come back in a video and say I'm wrong. That's all for today. Catch y'all later. Manana.